Federal Executive Council directs the relevant ministries to evolve framework for bitumen production. Senate signals readiness to pass 2021 budget in record time. Passes bill to reenact the banks and other financial institutions. Nigerian equities trade flat midweek as crude oil prices gain despite surge in U.S. inventories. The program is Business Express and we're reaching you from Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I am Muplang Dakok. The Federal Executive Council has directed the Ministry of Petroleum Resources and that of Mines and Steel Development to advance effective strategies towards enhancing, stimulating and encouraging local production of bitumen in the country. This followed a policy memorandum initiated by President Muhammadu Buhari on the source of bitumen used in the construction of roads and its cost in the country. Minister of Works and Housing Babatunde Fashola announced this while briefing journalists after the weekly meeting of the council.
Of course, help to further diversify the economy, open another subsector of the extractive and hydrocarbon industry for local opportunities. We see a demand of 500,000 metric tons of bitumen locally per annum. So we encourage all of those who can manufacture and produce bitumen locally to tap into this demand. We see the opportunity for thousands of job creation directly if this is done, and government intends to give as much encouragement and support to all those who take up this opportunity.
The council also approved the establishment of Nigerian Youth Investment Fund. The return of Nigeria's annual budget to 12 calendar months implementation period is a stride that must be sustained. Pursuant to that, the Senate has commenced the consideration of the 2021 to 2023 medium-term expenditure framework and fiscal strategy paper. President of Senate Ahmed Lawan says this is in readiness for the presentation of the 2021 appropriation bill by the executive in September.
Ensuring that we receive the budget estimates at the end of September and that we're able to consider the budget and get it passed before the end of December to repeat what we did for budget 2020.
Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, is to establish an infrastructure development company. The governor, Godwin Emefiele, disclosed this in Abuja. Emefiele, who spoke after the 274th meeting of the Monetary Policy Committee, said the company would leverage on local and international funds to rebuild critical infrastructure across the country. He said the federal government has already given approval for the establishment of the special purpose company, which would be wholly focused on Nigeria and Nigerians alone. The company would be co-owned by the CBN, the Africa Finance Corporation, AFC, and the Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority, NSIA. However, the management of the company would be exclusively run by the Independent Infrastructure Fund manager. The program is Business Express, reaching you from Abuja. On this edition, we shall be looking deeper at the establishment of an infrastructure company by the central bank, already approved by the federal government, and other matters arising. The program continues after this break.
Let me assure Nigerians that all COVID-19 intervention funds are safe in the Treasury single account, and that government is still open to donations in this regard. Government has opened special accounts with 5 commercial banks which are directly linked to the Treasury single account. Donated funds are safe in the Central Bank of Nigeria. For verifiable information about the funds and other financial obligations of the federal government, please contact us directly at the Federal Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning. The account details for the donations are as follows.
Professor Uchiwale is a professor of capital markets at the Nasarawa State University. He joins us for the business of the day. You're welcome, Prof, to the program.
Thank you.
All right. So the CBN says about 15 trillion naira is projected over 5 years for the running of the infrastructure development company. What do you make of this? Do you think it's too ambitious?
Well, let me say it's a welcome development.
Okay.
It cannot be said to be ambitious because even that figure, that amount is still like a drop, in the ocean when it comes to, bridging the infrastructure gap in this economy.
Okay.
There's no doubt at all that there's this strong relationship, this strong correlation between the stock of infrastructure and a nation's development. Okay. When you invest in infrastructure, it has a positive impact on, GDP, for example. There's no doubt about that. Unfortunately for us in Nigeria, the infrastructure gap is so huge. As a matter of fact, there are studies that have, that say that it's just about 35% of GDP, whereas the threshold, is supposed to be not less than 70%. In South Africa, for example, is over 80%. So in sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria is one of the least in terms of, stock of infrastructure to GDP. So you can see the deficit is everywhere. In the housing sector, for example, we hear of 17 million housing units. Okay, energy sector, transport sector, and that's even talking about economic infrastructure. I'm not talking about social infrastructure where you have, education, health, and the likes. So let us even stay with the economic infrastructure. The gap is so huge. So 15 million
may not even be enough.
Yes, isn't much. Again, we
15
understand 15 trillion. Yes, that for us to bridge that gap in infrastructure, studies have shown too that we need to spend a minimum of $100 billion on an annual basis for the next 30 years. $100 billion is about 36 trillion naira.
Wow.
Okay, so if we use 36 trillion naira every year, our budget, 2020 budget, is just 10.8 trillion. So even if you commit the entire money into infrastructure, it still has not gone. You see, you can see it's not ambitious. So that's why I said it's a welcome development. It adds to the existing money we are pumping into infrastructure. And of course,
All right. So what type of weight do you see the AFC and the NSIA bringing to the table, being that they are going to be key players in this infrastructure development?
Yes, it's a good thing. The CBN is saying that the company will be co-owned, the central bank will be funding, will be, bringing funds. African Finance Corporation, as you know, the multilateral institution we have in Africa for investments will also be involved. And then our Nigerian Sovereign Investment Authority that is managing the Sovereign Wealth Fund will also be there. Don't forget too that the NSIA, okay, the Sovereign Wealth Fund has even an infrastructure component, okay, that is also taken care of. AFC is also an investor in the Sovereign Wealth Fund. So when you have this pool of funds, okay, and another interesting thing is that the central bank is saying that the management of that fund will be completely left in the private hands. That's in the private sector. So it's not going to be any government influenced. Okay, so I think the idea of bringing in these people, because the CBN can fund it alone, okay, and private capital, at the end of the day, private capital is what we require in this country to develop infrastructure, because government funds cannot do it alone. Annual budgets insufficient to do that.
Okay, we've had the infrastructure bank for a while. What difference do you think is going to happen or come about now that it becomes an institution?
Yes, the infrastructure company, my understanding of what the central bank governor said is a different company from the infrastructure bank. Remember, the infrastructure bank has been around for some time. As a matter of fact, since 1992, it used to be the Urban Development Bank, and now, infrastructure bank of Nigeria. And you also know the structure of that bank, of the bank, where you have states, all the tiers of government, including Nigerian Labour Congress, shareholders. Of course, there's a significant ownership too, from the private sector. So it's more like a government-sponsored thing, but led by the private sector. So this one is a completely different company that will be in the hands of the private sector. So part of why the infrastructure bank has also been involved in infrastructure development, especially housing and transport infrastructure, water, storage, and the rest of them. But the challenge has always been funds. What is the capital base of infrastructure bank, for example? The capital base, will not allow it to do much more, as it would wish to do. Okay. The same with it's just like saying the other development finance institutions, the Bank of Industry, for example, Bank of Agriculture. Their major challenge remains capitalization. Okay. Yes.
We know that in 2016, Nigeria spent its way out of recession.
Yes,
now
absolutely.
We have peculiarities of COVID-19 in particular. Do you think the same strategy is going to work? Because government is already spending as it is.
That's the option. That's the best option that we have. Okay. To spend out of it, and I'm happy the government is has recognized that and is committing money into it. Once the 2.3 trillion enters this economy, I am pretty sure that the economy is not going to shrink as the IMF has, the size of the contraction will not be as high as minus 5.4% that the IMF has projected. So spending is the key thing, and the good thing is that central bank is also complementing with all the interventions it is making. So I see that having the impact of reflating the economy and helping us get out of any recession we eventually find ourselves in, maybe in the Q4 of 2020. Yes.
Okay. All right. The manufacturing sector is experiencing, of course, all sectors are experiencing hitches as a result of the COVID-19.
Absolutely.
And of course, infrastructure that we talked about.
Yes.
But the CBN is putting in, or is calling on private investors to put in finance to handle the manufacturing sector and infrastructure. What do you make of this development?
Yes, I said it earlier that private capital is actually what we require. And the moment you fix infrastructure, manufacturing will pick up. Manufacturing contributes about 10% of GDP. Okay, agriculture 22% of GDP. So all these the real sector of the economy will pick up the moment you spend on infrastructure. Because take energy, for example, electricity for power, for example. If you fix power, you can imagine the impact it will have on the cost of production. Okay, and when the cost of production comes down, you have increase in supply, and when there is increase in supply, inflation comes down. So it has a multiplier effect, on the economy. And Moklam, permit me to say this before we conclude, that the capital market represents a veritable means of unlocking infrastructure finance in this country. The government has been
yes, I was going to ask you how we can attract investors. So I think that's one of the ways we can attract.
Beautiful. Government has been issuing bonds to finance infrastructure. That is very good. But I would like to see a situation where government increases their the share of the sukuk bonds they issue, of the green bonds they issue. These are infrastructure bonds, as opposed to just borrowing and to finance other things. If you issue sukuk bond, that sukuk bond is tied to infrastructure. Okay, so infrastructure bonds, that is the way for us to go. Another area too is this tax credit that government has been using, which is also good. Getting companies to do, for example, roads, and then recover through tax credit. But it's also important that the government begins to also look at what I have not seen happening, the issue of asset securitization. Because that's also one way we can finance projects in this country. They are doing it in Malaysia, where, for example, it simply means converting assets into securities. Okay, look at the airport, for example. That is one thing we can do there. You create a company, for example. Okay, you create that company, issue shares to the public. Okay, people buy those shares, and then those investments will now be used to handle.
Before I let you go, very quickly, Prof, the whole idea is beautiful, but very quickly, how can we attract these investors to come in?
Yes, once the funds are put together, all that the company needs to do will be to identify income-generating assets, income-producing assets. And once income-generating assets are identified, okay, investors will come, institutional investors will come, pension funds will invest, mutual funds will invest, insurance companies will invest, okay? So that is the way for us to go. So I think it's a very good development.
All right, thank you very much. We've been speaking to Professor Uchiwale from Nasarawa State University. He is a professor of capital market. Moving on, the Senate has passed the bill to repeal the Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act (CAP) B3 laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004 and to reenact Banks and Other Financial Institutions Act (CAP) B3 laws of the Federation of Nigeria 2004. 2020, Amendment Bill 2020. In addition to strengthening the Nigerian financial system, the bill, sponsored by Senator Ubasani and co-sponsored by Senator Betty Jocelyn Apiafi, speaks to regulate banking and businesses of other financial institutions by prohibiting the carrying on of such businesses in Nigeria, except under license and by a company incorporated in Nigeria. And the House of Representatives has restated its determination to ensure restoration of effective service delivery in the power sector for economic development. House Leader Alhassan Ado Dogowa, who is also chairman of the ad hoc committee set up to investigate challenges in the sector towards a holistic review, says agencies of government that are major stakeholders should cooperate with the National Assembly in view of the critical role of the sector to industrial growth. He was speaking against the backdrop of the failure of the governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Godwin Emefiele, to appear before the committee for submissions. This is despite invitation by the committee to the CBN in order to access documents on payments, debts, and investments of government in the sector.
We had the same problem. The Minister of Finance was there, ably represented by the Permanent Secretary of the Ministry. Made some cases, made issues, tendered issues, very critical issues, that would have been ordinarily cleared if the central bank governor was there. Here we are today. The central bank governor decided to disregard this institution, disregard this committee, not to turn up and not to send any other person to come here in his own capacity, on his behalf. And here is the Accountant General of the Federation giving us answers that succinctly mean our questions can only be targeted to the central bank governor.
The Accountant General of the Federation, Ahmed Idris, appeared before the committee Wednesday and made submissions. The Debt Management Office was also at the investigative hearing. Meanwhile, investors midweek lost 477.29 million naira as the NSE All-Share Index closed flat and positive market turnover. It was a 0% decline as the NSE All-Share Index resumed this morning at 24,173.53 points. Its year-to-date currently stands at minus 9.94%. Market breadth closed flat with Eternal Oil leading 9 gainers, while the losing side on Wednesday was led by GlaxoSmithKline. USCN in the last trading session led the list of active stocks. It is the U.S. earnings season. Let's see how stocks are performing across the globe.
Asia-Pacific markets, which are hours ahead of Africa, traded mixed this Thursday, with Chinese mainland shares selling off and South Korea reporting a decline in second quarter GDP figures. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index rose 0.37%. Chinese mainland markets were lower, with the Shanghai Composite trading down 1.19%. European stocks are expected to open in mixed territory Thursday as concerns over rising US-China tensions weigh on sentiments. London's FTSE 100 is seen opening 8 points lower at 6,198 points. Germany's DAX 30 is up 24 points at 13,124 points. France's CAC 40 is also expected to open 11 points higher at 5,049 points. In the U.S., Dow Jones Industrial Average futures are falling 3 points, implying a marginal opening loss when regular trading resumes on Thursday. The S&P 500 and Nasdaq 100 futures were both little changed from the previous sessions. Stocks in Africa are yet to post figures. With global market updates, I'm Leah Katun, Baba Tunde.
We are now linking live with our correspondent at the National Military Cemetery for the burial of Flying Officer Tolulokpe Arotile.